Hello, viewers. My ABV measurements. Do I trust them? Today, there's going to be 4 rice wines that I test. I know 2 ways to measure the alcohol by volume of rice wine. One way is the hydrometer and refractometer method, and another way is the spirit indication method. I'm going to measure these 4 rice wines with both methods and try to get a definitive answer to the question, do I trust these measurements? If you like this video, please click that like button and subscribe. Click the bell to be notified of my new video every week on the subject of rustic Asian rice wine. And please share this video wherever it is appropriate. Is this a rustic video? So these are the 4 rice wines I'm testing today. First one is 86A. It's a Yongju, a 2-stage brew. It used 45 grams of my homemade nuruk and brewed for 15 days. I bottled this 2 years ago. And of course, this is the Cheongju, the clear layer from that brew. The second one is batch 95. It's a Regis rice wine. It's made with Regis rice and angel rice leaven, single stage, brewed for 30 days, and I bottled this 1.5 years ago. The third one I'm testing today is batch 106. It's an Yongju 2-stage brew made with brown rice, 100 grams of my own homemade nuruk, brewed for 31 days, and I bottled this one 11 months ago. The last one is the newest, batch 123A. I brewed this one with black rice. It's a single stage brew. It brewed at 30 degrees Celsius for 21 days, and I bottled this one 3 weeks ago. So I wanted to try to measure the ABV of a variety of different rice wines that I had made. This time, I'm trying to be extra careful with preparation and measurement. I'm trying to understand the precision of my instruments and the sensitivity of the calculation of the alcohol by volume. And of course, I'm trying to answer the question, can I trust my results? So for rice wine, we start off with rice and water. We have 0% sugar at the start. We do have some enzymes that cause simultaneous saccharification, that's the conversion of starch to sugar, and also we have yeast that does the fermentation, changing the sugar to alcohol. So we start off with rice and water and the enzymes and yeast, and we end up with sugar, alcohol, and water. So that's the basic process of rice wine fermentation. Simultaneous saccharification and fermentation. That causes some difficulty in measuring the alcohol content. We don't know how much sugar was produced over the course of brewing. These methods for measuring ABV are meant to overcome that limitation. So the first method is the hydrometer and refractometer method. For details on this method, please see my earlier video. We're just going to dive right into measuring 86A. I'm going to gently mix this in case the density is not uniform. This one has a sweet, fruity pear aroma. I think it has strong alcohol. It has a round, buttery flavor, and it has a bitter, astringent aftertaste. I need 120 milliliters in order to use the hydrometer, and I've marked that on the tube. Right now I think it's too cold. I want to wait for the bubbles to dissipate, and I want to wait for the wine to get to room temperature. And for consistency, I'm going to do the same for the others as well. I'm going to pour off about 120 milliliters and let the bubbles dissipate and it come to room temperature, so they'll all be consistent when I measure them. Also note that I'm only measuring the clear rice wine. I'm not trying to measure cloudy rice wine with the sediment mixed in. The hydrometer is not going to work in that situation where there's sediment in the wine. Okay, so here are the 4 wines that I want to measure. This method also uses a refractometer. I'm going to calibrate that with distilled water, which should give a reading of 0.0. This is how you adjust it. So adjust that so you get 0.0. Also calibrate with this reference solution, which is a saline solution. Should be 4.4. That's what I'm seeing, so that's good. Also important to rinse the refractometer very well and dry it between uses. You don't want any contamination, of course. 1 hour later, waiting for everything to come to room temperature. This is pretty much room temperature. So all the samples should be about the same now. And we'll put the hydrometer in the tube and make sure there's no bubbles sticking to it. Twirl it around a bit, let things settle. And this first one is, hydrometer is reading 1.000 as far as I can tell. This is going to be quite accurate. The idea of the hydrometer is very simple, and at 1.000, that's the same density as water. But we do need to adjust for temperature. So looking at the chart here, at the current temperature, I need to add 0.001 to the reading. So the specific gravity is 1.001. That's the relative density of this liquid compared to water. I'll take a little sample of that and put it on the refractometer and see what the refraction is. This is measured in bricks equivalents here. Looks to me like this is 14.8 bricks. So bricks is a measurement of sugar content, but here it's just being used as a measurement of the refraction index of this liquid. I'm going to pour this off and put it in the fridge. I won't waste this. I'm going to drink it later. But we have plenty more things to measure first. Like I said earlier, I'm rinsing and drying the equipment between measurements. That's quite important. So the second one is the Regis rice wine from 1.5 years ago. This one has a warm, earthy aroma. It has a sharp start. The taste is sweet, toasty butter. I think this has a medium alcohol content. Pour that one into the hydrometer tube. Reading I see here is 1.012. Add 1 point, so I get 1.013 after adjusting for temperature. Put it on the refractometer, wait 30 seconds for temperature to equalize, and now I see 17.2 bricks for this. And I'll pour that off and put this one in the fridge too. Next one is 106, which was the 2-stage brew with brown rice. This one has an apple aroma, and the taste is like sort of apple pie, sweet spice kind of taste. It ends astringent. I think this one has a medium alcohol content. And that's just my judgment by taste. We'll see what my measurements give me later on. Pour this one into the hydrometer tube. And there's a lot of bubbles. I'm going to wait for that to dissipate. I see a reading of 997, so that's 0.998. The refractometer is showing me 15.0 bricks. Okay. And the last one, 123A, made with black rice. This one has a smoky aroma, like plum juice, and a smoky taste, like swametang. And the end has the flavor of plum skin, more astringent. And I think this one is weaker in alcohol. And the specific gravity for this one, 1.008. Add 0.001, I get 1.009. And putting the sample on the refractometer, I'm seeing 15.0 bricks. Okay, so let's summarize these results for the hydrometer and refractometer measurements. So I have the specific gravity, which is the density of this liquid relative to water, and I have a bricks measurement, which is a measurement of the refraction of this liquid for these 4 rice wines. And then what I do, plug it into a formula. Here's a handy formula on the web here, where you plug in the specific gravity and the bricks, and it tells you the ABV, the alcohol by volume. Oh, so that's showing an alcohol content of 22.18. Okay, so let me do that for all of them. These are the numbers I get from that formula. Okay, so what's wrong with this? Well, for one thing, they're all too high. The yeast that I'm using, I don't think it has that kind of alcohol tolerance that could produce such a high percentage of alcohol. It wouldn't be able to survive long enough to produce that much alcohol. Those numbers are suspicious for being too high. They're also falsely precise. There's not that many significant digits in my specific gravity or my bricks measurements. You can't really say there's 4 significant digits in the ABV result. So, for example, my specific gravity measurements could easily be off by 0.001, and my bricks measurements could easily be off by 0.2 plus or minus. So how sensitive is the ABV calculation to these variations? So to figure that out, I just adjust the values by those amounts. So instead of 0.001, what if it was 0.000? That changes the alcohol content. What if I change the bricks as well to 15.0? In that case, the ABV would be 22.9. And if I had the specific gravity 0.002 and the bricks at 14.6, the ABV would be 21.46. So if my measurements are off by those small amounts, the ABV calculation changes by quite a large amount. And I'm calling that the sensitivity range here, S dot range. And you can see that for 86A, the sensitivity range is from 21.5 to 22.9. So I've done that calculation for all 4 of these rice wines, and they're still too high, except maybe for the last one. But that's the one I thought was particularly weak. So I don't think they can be that high realistically. But wait, there's more. I also have the spirit indication method, where I measure the specific gravity. I take a sample, I measure the specific gravity, I boil off about half the volume, I add water to return to the original volume, and I measure the specific gravity again. And the difference between the 2 measurements determines the ABV. And to see more details on the spirit indication method, please see my earlier video. Okay, so I'm going to take another sample. This time it's going to be important that I have exactly the same volume at the start and the end of these tests. So I make sure I'm exactly at the line. I'm going to let this warm up to room temperature. And 1 hour later, okay, close enough. This method requires me to measure the temperature and the specific gravity at 2 points, before and after boiling. So the first temperature is 18.1, and first specific gravity is 1.000. This time I don't adjust for temperature myself because the formula will do the adjusting for me. All right, now I carefully take it out and let the hydrometer drip, drip, drip. So I still have the same volume, still at the mark, and I'm going to try to evaporate all the alcohol out of this. So I try to get every drop into the pan here, and I'm going to evaporate for about 15 minutes on low heat. I don't want to boil it, but I do want more than half of the volume to evaporate. Okay, that's happened now, And now I'm going to add some water, for one thing, to cool it down so I can pour it back into the hydrometer tube. And I'm going to rinse the pan again with more distilled water. I'm going to bring it up to that same mark that I started with. So all the alcohol has been evaporated along with much of the water. Then I replaced the missing volume with distilled water. In effect, all the alcohol has been replaced with water. The amount of sugar and other solids has not been affected. So this should let us measure the alcohol. We're going to let the bubbles dissipate and let temperature stabilize closer to room temperature. So now it's too hot. Okay, and now enough time has passed. Second temperature is 19.9, and the second specific gravity is 1.021. After evaporating the alcohol and replacing the alcohol with water, this liquid is now denser than water, and that has to be because of dissolved sugars and other solids. Let's measure the next one, 95. Pour this sample into the tube exactly up to the mark. First temperature is 17.9 and specific gravity 1.014. I evaporate this one down, add some water, let it cool, pour it back in the tube, rinse the pan again, add enough water to get it all the way up to the top. And the second temperature is 21.0. Second specific gravity was 1.035. Next one is 106, the one that was brewed with brown rice. First temperature measurement before boiling is 19.0, specific gravity 0.998. Add water, put it back to the mark. The color is darker at the bottom, so it's not uniform. I need to stir this to make sure it's uniform, so the density is uniform from top to bottom. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to use the hydrometer to measure the density. So I stir this for a while, get it mixed together. And stirring introduces bubbles. I have to wait for the bubbles to dissipate. So the second temperature, 21.0, second specific gravity, 1.020. Okay, and finally, batch 123. Let's see what this is going to give us. So the first measurement is 19.1 degrees and specific gravity of 1.008. And I evaporate this one and add enough water to bring it back to the mark. Again, need to stir this because it's clearly not uniform. And the second temperature is 21.2. Second specific gravity is 1.027. Okay, let's summarize the results for the spirit indication method. So these are all the raw measurements that I just showed you, how I got. And again, we're going to use this website to calculate the ABV. This calculation includes the hydrometer's calibration temperature, which is 15.6, and it adjusts for the temperatures for you. So for the first one, I get an ABV of 17.3. Do the same for all 4 rice wines. This is what I get. Both of the specific gravity measurements could easily be plus or minus 0.001. So like before, we're going to see how sensitive this spirit indication calculation is to those kind of variations. And it is less sensitive to the small variations in temperature. So I'm not going to adjust the temperatures, just the specific gravities. And it does make a big difference to the final results. With both of them being plus or minus 0.001, there's a wide range, and that's indicated here in the S dot range column here. For the first rice wine, 86A, there's a possible range here of 15.4 to 19.3, and that range is just taking into account a small variation in my measurement accuracy. So that's one thing. It's a large range. And the second thing to notice is that all of these ranges overlap. So really, what that means is that small measurement errors can make all four of these ABVs indistinguishable. 17% is included in all of these ranges. Can't distinguish any of these rice wines with this calculation. So let's compare both of these methods. The H&R is the hydrometer and refractometer method, the first method we tried, and SI is the spirit indication method that we just finished. And these are the ranges, the sensitivity ranges that I got for both of these calculations. So what do we notice here? Well, there's no overlap in ranges. The H&R column never overlaps with the SI column. So measurement errors alone can't explain the difference here. They're not close enough. Something else must be going on because they're not. Both of these methods are sound methods for measuring ABV for wine. Why aren't they working for rice wines here? Well, okay, so what conclusion do I have by looking at both of these? So can these methods be trusted? Well, these two methods disagree beyond small measurement errors. The hydrometer refractometer method gave values that were just beyond realistic values, too high. The spirit indication method gave values that were indistinguishable, assuming small measurement errors. So I don't trust either of them as giving accurate absolute values for ABV. But an absolute ABV might not be the only thing you want. You might want to try to understand relative ABV. You might want to compare ABV from one wine to another. So can these methods be trusted for relative ABV? Well, both methods indicated the same brew as having the highest ABV and the same brew as having the lowest ABV. So at least that's some consistency, but the methods indicated different orders for the second and third places. So I don't trust these methods for comparison of ABV values either, unless one of the measurements is identical, the specific gravity or the Brix between the two brews, or the difference in calculated ABVs is large. Then maybe it's telling you something. But it's hard even to trust this to tell you the relative ABV values between two different wines. It was a fair amount of work to get to this point, but I think it was worth doing because this is something that, as a brewer, it's a natural thing to want to know the alcohol content of your wines. If you just have one method for calculating the ABV and one formula, you might trust it and get a false sense of precision. But if you have more than one method, you can compare them and sort of get a sense for how much to trust it. And well, I have to say that I don't trust these methods now. There must be some other factors involved here. Could be other dissolved substances that affect the refraction, for instance. But this is good information to know. I can't just naively follow some methods that work for wine and expect them to give me reliable results in my kitchen. Obviously, there's other things going on that are making it more difficult to calculate the ABV accurately. So that's good for me to learn this, and I hope you enjoyed the journey it took to get to this conclusion. I appreciate you watching all the way until the end of this video. If you have any comments, please let me know. If you have any ideas about ABV calculations for rice wines, I would love to hear about it. Thank you for watching.